Hey everybody, Teresa here from Inspiration Cards, and I'm back to share another project with you. And I'm going to be doing a little more watercoloring for you today. July is World Watercolor Month, so I'm having a lot of fun doing a lot of different watercoloring type projects this month. And today I'm going to share just a simple card, and I'm just going to create a watercolor background for the card. So let me flip this around so you can see what I mean. So here's our card for today. So with today's card, I'm going with a bit of a beach theme since it is July. We're in the midst of the hot, humid summer up here. So what I've done, as you can see, I did a little bit of a kind of a watercolor background. I'm actually going to try and get this a little bit lighter in this version here. So I've used a combination of the Friends Are Like Seashells stamp set and the In the Moment stamp set. So I've combined these two for today's card. And so what I'm going to use, it's going to look a little something like this. So of course I've got my Coastal Cabana and my Crumb Cake are the two main colors for the card today. I love using Crumb Cake with these kinds of cards because it really gives a nice little kind of beachy sandy feel to the cards. So this is about a little less, a quarter of a sheet of Crumb Cake cardstock, 8.5 by 11 size. And then this is an 8.5 by 11 piece of Coastal Cabana, just cut in half. Okay. And then again, we've got another piece of basic white, same size as that Crumb Cake, so just a little smaller than a quarter size of an 8.5 by 11. So it's 4 inches by 5.25 inches, if I'm remembering correctly. And then just an eighth, there we go. This is actually just a piece of watercolor, the Fluid 100 watercolor paper from the Stampin' Up! Annual Catalog. And I took one sheet and just basically cut it in half. So it actually will be a little bit smaller than what I usually do for my borders for my card friends. But I actually wanted that on purpose so you could see a little bit of what I'm going to do, a little bit of kind of a sandy feel around the border. And then I've got a piece of basic white die cut using one of the smallest stitched rectangles dies. And then I've got a couple other just scrap pieces of basic white because I'm going to use those for our seashells. I already have a couple stamped and fussy cut already. So let's get started by just folding that card base in half. There we go. I'm going to set that off to the side. I'm going to grab that piece of Crumb Cake cardstock. And as I said, I'm going for a bit of a beachy kind of sandy feel. So I'm going to do some tone-on-tone stamping with the sand. I guess I'm assuming this is, grains of sand. I mean, you could use it for just having a speckled kind of background. So there's my Crumb Cake ink pad, and I'm just going to stamp around the edges, and just every once in a while I'm just going to rotate my stamp, right? You don't want it all looking the same, right? As we all know, we've gone to the beach, right? They all kind of blend together. But you can see some little bits of differences, right? Some are a little shinier than others, right? So you want to change it up a little bit, right? Sand doesn't go in a straight line. There we go. All right, so there we go. And there's a bit of a beachy sandy border for us. And actually, while I have my Crumb Cake open, let's stamp our two seashells. All right. Now I love the sand dollar image, so I use it quite a bit. I'm hoping looks like that might be just big enough to fit on there. Here we go. So I want to give this time to dry because I'm going to cut that out. And on our other piece of basic white, I'm just going to grab one of the smaller seashells. Here we go. This one's got a little bit more pattern, have a little bit more of that crumb cake color to it. There we go. Once I've got that covered in ink, I'm just going to press that down firmly onto my basic white cardstock. All right, there we go. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute. And on that larger piece of basic white, we're going to stamp a little something on the inside. One of my other favorites is the starfish image. This whole stamp set is a big favorite of mine. As soon as I saw it, I just loved the images themselves, right? There's so much kind of dimension to them. It's not just a solid image, and the phrases that come with this set are just awesome, right? It makes it such a versatile stamp set. So even though, right, it's all seashells, like you really can use it for lots of different occasions. All right, so I'm just going to gently tap my starfish onto my ink pad. And there we go. I'm going to set that off to the side. All right. I'm going to pull in my piece of watercolor paper. There we go. And my Memento black ink. All right. And I'm going to first stamp my image here. So I'm going to do the watercoloring around her. Here we go. And I'm going to do a little bit on her as well. There we go. And that's just going to go right down here towards the bottom right hand corner. There we go. There we go. Perfect. So I'm going to set that aside to dry for a minute. And while that dries, I'm going to grab my smallest die cut piece of basic white. And I'm going to move my Leo out of the way before he makes a big mess behind me. There we go. All right, so the phrase is also from the In the Moment stamp set. I love to color, so this is a great stamp set for that. All right, so I'm just gonna stick that on there. There we go. Pull in my Coastal Cabana ink. Go, and that's going to go right in the center, or as best I can anyways. Usually when I'm doing something this close, I like to stamp first and then die cut. So we'll see how this goes. Oh, not too bad. But you know what? I'm going to flip that over and we're going to try it again. It was not quite as straight as I was hoping. All right. There we go. Excuse me if I nudge the camera. There we go. Much better. All right. All right. So let's pull this guy in here. And I'm just going to grab a piece of my Stamparatus grid paper just to kind of soak up some of the extra water, and just in case. There we go. All right. So I'm going to start with our woman here. I'm going to start with my with our crumb cake ink. So I'm just going to squish that together. And it's the same whether you have the older ink pads or the newer ones. I do find with the older ones, it's a little easier to squish. But it does all come out the same. All right, and here's my water painter. So I'm just going to get a little bit of water on my water painter first. And then I'm going to just grab some ink off the lid. There we go. Do that belt on there too, just to have a little something to break that up a bit. And then of course you get the hat as well. And there's Leo making an appearance. Hey, Betty. And I want to go a little darker with the hair. So I'm going to scoop up a little bit more ink and just directly, not going to dab it off to the side or anything like that. Hey, Betty. All right, excuse me, mister. Come here. Oh, down you go. All right. Here we go. Let's finish this up here. Apparently he's very interested in my crafting today. There we go. Are you bored? All right, so I'm just gonna give that a little wipe on my paper. All right, mister. I'd like to lock the door. Okay. All right, now for the Coastal Cabana, because it's not a full size, this is gonna look a little different. So that's where my Stampin' Block is going to come from. So I'm just going to take my Stampin' Spot and actually put the ink right onto my block. Go. And I'm going to go a little darker. Oops. There we go. With the dress. I don't want too dark. The nice thing with the watercolor, right, if it's not, 100% even, that's okay, right? In real life, there's shadows and brighter spots, right? So it makes it look a little more realistic in that sense. There we go. All right. Now, for kind of our, whether it's sea or sky, for that look, I'm gonna just take up just a little bit, and I'm gonna, really kind of dab that onto my paper first. And if it does get a little dark, like that one did a little bit, I'm just gonna squirt a little bit more water on there. And that'll kind of help it blend in a little bit better. There we go. Now as I get closer to her, I'm going to be a little more, I'm trying to be a little more careful. Because I don't want the water to kind of get my stamped image all runny, right? So as close as I can get to her as I can. Here we go. There we go. That's a cat hair, or what that is. All right, sneak in a little bit there. And one last little bit just down here in the corner. Here we go. All right, now I'm gonna set that aside to dry. Now it's likely not gonna be fully dry in the next minute or so, but we'll see how we can manage. So while that dries, I saved this until now on purpose, so that way we'd have lots of time for, well, maybe not lots, but a little more time for that piece of watercolor paper to dry. Now, if you are in a bit of a hurry, you can actually use the heat tool, and that will actually, as long as you keep it a little further away, because you don't want the heat tool blowing the water and the ink around. So you'll want to have it a little further back from the paper than if you were heat embossing. But your heat tool can totally help speed up the drying process when you're doing your watercoloring. All right. So another reason why I love this stamp set, I don't have the coordinating dies, although I love them. It's really easy to just do some quick fussy cutting on these images, right? There's not too many small kind of pieces that you want to get around, right? And trying to avoid some of that kind of white, or in this case, very vanilla, just kind of cardstock space, that negative space. All right, and let's see if we can get this. This is the one part that might be a little trickier, but if you come at it from either side, there we go. Then you get your little indent, your little cutout. All right, so let's grab our other pieces. So we'll get to sticking this together. Again, I want to give that piece of watercolor paper as much time to dry as possible. Oh, and I need to grab, oh, I knew I was forgetting something. All right, my stamp and seal. There we go. All right. So I'm just gonna take my stamp and seal, my tape runner, and just run that along the back of my cardstock. There we go. And this is going to go on the inside. So there's lots of room to write a handwritten note. There you go. And here's our beach. Right. One of my favorite color combinations is actually blues and browns. Often I'll pair pool party with crumb cake when I'm doing stuff like this. But I wanted to go a little brighter, and so that's why I went with Coastal Cabana this time. There we go. All right, now let's give... So for the most part it's dry. You can see that last little bit. There's still a little bit of water. So I'm just going to give that a little extra wave. All right, my heat, as much as I would love to use my heat tool right now, just the noise would be a little crazy. All right, so note to self. Here we go. Actually, let me grab my, there we go. So any extra water can kind of get squished into the paper. There we go. There we go. All right. So that's going to go right there in the center. So a little bigger. Usually the biggest border that I'll do when I'm doing my cards is about 1/4 of an inch around. So you can see this is a little bit bigger, but as I said, right, this way you get to see those grains of sand and really gives you more of that beachy kind of feel. All right, now to add our phrase, I'm going to use a couple of dimensionals on the back here. So we can cover up that crooked phrase from earlier. It's going to go up here towards that top left-hand corner. Here we go. And all these guys are going to get popped up as well. I think I'm just going to add one. I mean, you could always add in an extra one kind of up here if you like. Oh, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. I might just have an extra seashell on my hands. All right. So these guys are going to go on with dimensionals. And you could, if you wanted to add a little something more to the seashells, you could actually add a little bit of the Wink of Stella glitter brush to make those seashells a little bit more, a little bit shinier, right? I always like to, well, not always, more often than not, I love to add a little bit of bling to just about all of my cards. I'm just going to peel that off the back, and that's going to go right here. Here we go. And for this guy here, again, I'm going to grab my Stampin' Seal one more time, because that guy's going to layer right on top of the other ones. So there you have it. I hope you liked this week's card. I'll be back next week to share another little something with you guys. In the meantime, if you liked today's video, I hope that you'll share and like it so that others can enjoy it as well. You can also check out my other projects on social. You can find me at Inspiration Cards on both Facebook and Instagram. And of course, you can always check out my blog for whatever's kind of going on with me and with Stampin' Up. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon.